Welcome back into Studio 5. You know, it's a story that is hitting the hearts of women everywhere. In February, Emily Dyches was killed when she jumped out of the car and ran in front of a semi-truck on I-15. This happened near Nephi. Now, the way she died, that made headlines. But Emily's husband wants to make sure people understand the way she lived. He's now sharing her legacy in hopes of helping other women deal with mood disorders that can be linked to postpartum depression. My colleague Sam Penrod has more on the family's efforts that they call the Emily effect.
Your talents, your beauty, your kindness, your touch.
A keyboard is the only way Eric Dyches can tell his wife,
"We miss and love you." Love, Eric.
A love story that began when they were both 8 years old.
I think back to about the 3rd grade is really when I was drawn to her. She was my first date. She was my first kiss. We were married in October of 1998.
Eric and Emily were happy, raising 4 children, and were excited to welcome a 5th child to their family.
And it was just, you know, kind of the dream. It's our last child. We're making the most of it.
But soon after she returned home from the hospital in March of last year, Emily's mental health began to suffer.
A few days after she got home, I could sense that she was very, very different.
Emily was agitated and depressed. She consulted her OB/GYN, who prescribed some antidepressants, and her condition began to improve. So by August, she thought she no longer needed the medication. But as time went on, the anxiety returned, and she began having panic attacks.
The sensation is you're in a burning building.
This is how she described it to her husband.
You try to get to safety. You're trying to get somewhere safe. Or others have described it as you're drowning and you cannot, you're fighting for air.
Frankly, people don't understand panic attacks very well. In general,
the Dyches made several visits to the ER, and then Emily began seeing psychiatrist Tom Dyches, who told the Dyches Emily's symptoms suggested more than postpartum depression, possibly PTSD.
You can get PTSD from delivering a baby. You know, if something went wrong in the delivery.
And for Emily, it did.
It was a traumatic event for both of us.
Emily had serious complications during labor, and after delivering Trey, her doctor feared she might be at risk for a fatal embolism.
I honestly thought I was losing my wife. And I think she thought she was going too.
By the end of January, the anxiety overwhelmed Eric and Emily. Their insurance wouldn't cover outpatient treatment, so Emily willingly checked herself into a psychiatric hospital their insurance would cover. But Emily was just one of 2 women in the facility and felt out of place.
There's someone that just came in here and he continues to talk about his felonies, and it's really scary.
After what Eric calls 11 grueling nights, Emily was released. And for the next 2 weeks, they believed her struggles were finally over. But on February 24th, her anxiety exploded again. She couldn't sleep. Eric comforted her throughout the night, and in the morning, she decided to go visit her parents.
She was just suffering so much. She came down that day because of the love that we have.
But that afternoon, as her dad was driving her home,
she went from that anxiety to the panic so very quickly. It was really stunning to me, and I was not prepared for it.
Lynn Cook was talking with Eric on the phone as Emily began suffering a panic attack in the car along I-15.
And so it was like the perfect storm in the sense that we were on the freeway, and I had no alternative to stop. And she was able to get out of the vehicle and wandered onto the freeway, and very disoriented.
Eric could hear the commotion, then the phone was silent.
I don't think Emily was trying to take her own life. I do not believe that. But at this point, it doesn't matter. The illness was very, very deep.
Eric believes they did everything they could to help Emily.
I wouldn't suggest that I would blame any, the caregivers. We took full advantage of the medical resources that we had at our disposal. I've since come to find out there's other resources. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight.
Eric found those resources are underfunded and not readily accessible. And that is what he hopes to change through the Emily Effect Foundation.
She was such a good mother. And that's what she wanted to be, was a mother.
Depression is the #1 complication of childbirth, but few mothers are screened for mood disorders. Eric wants to change that.
I think the one thing that I've really learned through this process is we need to anticipate better.
In Utah, there are only a handful of therapists who have specialized training in perinatal mental health.
An uneducated counselor can actually do much more harm than good.
And thank you to Women's Services.
Amy Rose White directs the Utah Maternal Mental Health Collaborative and says,
With the right help, you will be well. Full recovery is possible.
And because of the Emily effect, more women are seeking help.
I just wanted you to know that your wife literally saved my life.
Emily's family is still coming to terms with her death.
We've had some hard times, obviously. But as I look at them, I see her fingerprints and I feel her through them. And Trey, our 1-year-old, he keeps us happy.
He can't wait to date.
And knowing they can help other mothers has brought all those who loved Emily
Your camera still sits where you left it.
a lot of peace.
So for now, Em, we are dancing without you, giving the best effort we can give. Dance on, Em.
Even though this story is so heartbreaking, Emily's family believes it is a story of hope, and they want it to inspire other mothers, other women, to seek help. Our own Studio 5 contributor, Dr. Liz Hale, is joining me with more on what women can take away from Emily's story, from Emily's legacy. Liz, thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's
you know,
my
this
honor.
story is spreading on social media, and
That's wonderful.
It is.
Yeah.
It's all my girlfriends can talk about.
Yeah.
I think in part because as you hear about Emily and what a good engaged mother she was and how diligent she was in seeking that help, everyone sees a part of themselves in her. I'm curious to know, how prevalent is anxiety and depression in mothers with new babies?
So either during or after pregnancy, 1 in 7 women. That's a lot of women.
1 in 7.
1 in 7, yeah. That's us here in our studio even. Can experience along the continuum of something called this perinatal depression and anxiety disorder. That's a lot of us. You know how sometimes we're predisposed to heart disease? Sometimes we have a predisposition to depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, even bipolar, sometimes psychosis. But it's unique to this time period, and the treatment is also unique. So the more we get the word out, the more prepared we will be. And you know, there's something about this, what did somebody call it? This silencing conspiracy. That it's really difficult to talk about the difficulties of motherhood. It's not very popular and it's not very comfortable, but we have to be talking about it. And there's no reason for anyone to suffer in silence. Too many women have gone through this and come out the other side and live to support other women in doing so.
I have to say, as a new mom myself, as I reflect on this topic, I think we're getting better. It was talked about quite a bit, I have to say, to me during my pregnancy, through my OB and through girlfriends. But the side effects she experienced, the anxiety, the panic, those are still aspects that are, I think, underexplored and that women aren't really aware of. I know you had a chance to talk to and interview Eric Dyches, her husband. What did you take away from that conversation?
Eric was so generous in that he sat and emailed me and our viewers some additional supportive comments, in particular to fathers. He recommends this one book on postpartum depression just for husbands. And yeah, he's those beautiful pictures. The Postpartum Husband, Practical Solutions for Living with Postpartum Depression. He went on also to add some other points about educating yourself as a caregiver. You don't have to fix this, but your job as a husband is to listen and hold, validate, touch, look, hope, and then do it all over again. Don't overreact when your wife shares intrusive thoughts. Know that they're going to be temporary, that they're common, and they are ever seldom likely to unfold. Symptoms of postpartum depression and anxiety, they might be severe and long-lasting, but they'll eventually go away. So have hope. And then lastly, choose an OB office that makes mental health a priority and that screens for anxiety and depression and psychosis, where they stay on top of it.
Well, as we talk about staying on top of it, even anticipating it, as we heard him say in that piece, I want to know about prevention and recovery, because you really emphasize finding the right therapist is really key to all of this.
That is always the case. There's always wow, you just can't find a therapist for someone. It's like finding a puppy. You don't even, it's just such a personal decision. But in a scenario, you really do need to find someone who is a perinatal psychotherapist, ideally, or someone who's willing to get educated. Because these issues are complicated and they are specific to this time and place, the treatment is also very specific. So Amy Rose White, who you saw in the piece, couldn't stress that enough, of finding somebody who's qualified, somebody who's willing to go the limit with you as well. Certain therapies have been evidence-based in the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, in particular cognitive behavioral therapy, which is great about looking looking at how our thoughts lead to our mood and our behaviors, as well as interpersonal therapy, which takes a little bit of time because it's based mainly on the relationship between the therapist and the client. A trusting relationship, that takes some time, but all worth it.
Is a mood disorder then treatable at the end of the day?
It is so easily treatable, particularly in this regards with perinatal mood and anxiety. The problem is just not doing anything or feeling so paralyzed you don't reach out. It's not the time to dive deeply into childhood issues, really. It's the time to find someone who's going to be very directive with you and active, give you homework assignments, focus on the here and now, and really try to change those behaviors.
What role does medication play in that process?
You know, when you look at the neurotransmitters of the brain, there's at least 5 that regulate mood and emotion and anxiety. So of course they have their place. They're not for everyone, but if you're prescribed an antidepressant or anti-anxiety, do take it. And most importantly, when things are going well, don't change anything, especially not with checking with the prescriber who did so. There are even some helpful benefits to 5-HTP, St. John's wort, SAMe. There's been some evidence-based studies on those if you don't want to try meds at first. Even nutrition, and keep taking your multivitamin, your good prenatal vitamin. That's such a good thing. Or fish oil. You know, the brain is made up of so much fat. Sometimes doing those nutritional things, getting plenty of sleep, a little bit of exercise, a support group, can't be stressed enough.
I think there is a concern out there. If I go for the medication, if that's needed in this situation, I'm going to be bound to that, dependent on that for the rest of my life. Is that true?
You know what, even a year on meds or 2 years on meds is not long term. So please, if it's working, don't change it, and don't be worried about that. Sometimes, you know, if you've got diabetes, you wouldn't think twice about insulin. So I think we really need to change the way we look at antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, and also be willing to try other things as well. But don't stop. You deserve to find a provider who meets your needs, who understands the process and the particulars of this particular illness, and don't give up and reach out and talk to other women. Support groups. There's some great resources on our website. I can't say enough about them.
We've put together a comprehensive list that hopefully will be a great resource for women out there. Liz, thank you so much.
Take the time to go through those.
Absolutely. Again, we'll post those resources, that comprehensive list of resources for you on our website. Look for that at studio5.ksl.com. You can also search The Emily Effect on both our website and KSL.com. We'll be right back.